I cannot escape images and spoilers of the MCU on Twitter, yet none of the early movies look quite like the recent ones, except of course for Kenneth Branagh's 2011 Marvel Universe expansion, Thor. Sprawling CGI and campy humor throughout, this movie feels like the blueprint that the rest of the franchise will follow. And also, it kinda felt like a polished version of what the Incredible Hulk was going for. Or is that just me? Well, I shall definitely see if my predictions are true once every 3 videos, when I knock out the breakdowns for the MCU. The timestamps for each sequence can be found in the comment section for your viewing pleasure. Now, let's begin. We start as always with a focus on our protagonist, specifically their personality, their inner conflict, and their situation. Love interest Jane Foster accidentally sniffs out Loki's betrayal in the heavens. Then we're treated to the wider realms and legends in Odin's voice, and finally settle upon Thor with Brother Loki, young tykes with ambition. Next, we examine where, why, and how our protagonists exist in their world, with a focus on why they don't quite fit in. Thor is put up against Loki to compete for the throne, who proves himself arrogant and entitled as an adult, unlike Odin. Then the safety of the realm feels shaky. Then a brief event happens, one that's never happened before. It's destined to lead all the characters away from their status quo. Thor's ego and bravado are checked by an angry Odin, which leads us to examine the effect of that something new to the status quo, specifically what's different now and also what remains the same. Loki pipes up and agrees with Thor, and they scheme. We meet Thor's crew and get a taste of their personalities. Then the whole crew travels to Jotunheim for answers. We move along to the discovery that things are less than ideal, or else we explore how badly things are. Both scenarios are common. Nothing in Jotunheim looks like war preparations, and Laufey reveals the treachery within Asgard. Next, our characters dedicate their effort to a specified goal, and this is always narrower in scope than what the third act will demand. We're treated to an action sequence of grand Marvel scale, partially because Act 3 is much more personal, and the crew gets to flex their unique abilities and fighting styles. Then we run through a brief checklist of the main story elements that we can expect during this journey. The perils of interplanetary politics, Odin's line of worthy succession, Thor's punishment and banishment to Earth, and his abrupt partnership with Jane. Which brings us to the brief event that launches our characters into the wild jungle of the second act. It's also called the oh shit moment. Darcy defeats a Norse god with a taser, showing us just how vulnerable he is in mortal form. Oh shit. We follow our characters as they discover the new rules and expectations of their journey. These are always distinct to the narrative at play. Thor struggles to overcome the power of Earth healers, while Mjolnir rejects its first unworthy candidate. Jane's research hinges on the man they almost killed, and the Earth crew hunts him down. Next, our characters showcase their ability to grow and progress, and this is typically an external or physical beat rather than internal or emotional. Agent Coulson arrives at the impact site, catching us up to Iron Man 2. Thor blends in with Earth clothes, subtly revealing that Jane, has a type, and the Asgard crew begins asking the right questions. Then our characters face legitimate and understandable reasons to deviate from their stated convictions, agendas, or desires. Loki is shook by his newfound ice giant abilities. Then Odin reveals that he's actually the heir to a completely different throne, and Jane is rattled by Eric's warning and keeps her distance from Thor. We endure the anxiety as our characters face an escalation of problems and complications. Agent Coulson relocates Jane's research to a secure facility, while Loki takes the throne in Odin's absence. The Asgard crew keep their silence about their worries, and Loki pushes his agenda forward. Next, our characters evolve internally or emotionally, and they do this by using elements of the plot or story, which they've gathered and learned so far. Eric's doubt is reinforced by a children's book of mythology. Jane pushes through her apprehension to go to the impact site with backup. Then Loki fears a possible Odin scheme where Thor returns for the throne. Then our journey-weary characters come to terms with their ongoing struggles. Moments and elements from the first act are used to gauge their progress. The Act 1 impact site has grown into a government village. Thor faces an upgrade to his opposition, just like the Act 1 ice giants. Then he and Mjolnir reunite since their Act 1 separation, which results in a brief event that strikes at our protagonist's core conflict. Mjolnir denies that Thor is worthy to wield it, and there's no turning back from here. We receive needed answers alongside our characters, which relate to both their external journeys and their internal conflicts. Despite Eric's doubt, Jane and Darcy believe in the strange man they hit. Then Loki informs his brother of his now permanent exile. Next, our characters complete their narrow scope objective, yet discover that their victory is shallow or altogether meaningless without also completing a wider scope objective. Eric goes to bat for Thor, for Jane, but ends up giving Agent Coulson an avenue for recon. Thor agrees to leave Jane alone, but that was before a night of manly drinking. Then our characters face an existential conflict that wounds their sense of self, their worldly identity, or their physical journey. Loki reveals his treachery to Laufey and brokers an alliance. Then he shuts down the Rainbow Bridge, isolating everyone, while Thor and Jane finally find themselves alone. We celebrate with our protagonist in light of an undeniable win, which is always related to the rebirth in some way. Thor and Jane connect, and it propels him along his emotional arc. The Asgard crew rallies for Thor and his return, and Heimdall steps aside to let them fetch him. Next, our characters suffer a grand loss. This is always connected to their newfound inability to quit their journey. Agent Coulson detects the Asgard crew arriving on Earth. Loki orders the Enforcer to follow them and stop his brother. Thor learns of the lies he was told, and Loki takes control of the Rainbow Bridge from Heimdall. Then we experience a thematic freefall, as the main story elements are ramped up and thrown into upheaval. The Enforcer arrives on Earth and is a dick, and the Asgard crew is no match for the magical robot. Then Thor sacrifices himself to end the destruction, which forces us into a brief event that robs our protagonist of seemingly any hope of success. The Enforcer strikes down Thor, merely a mortal in a soft, weak body. We watch our characters realize that they cannot return to their first act selves, and they turn to face the wider scope objective. Mjolnir deems the act as worthy of its power. Then we're treated to some big screen mighty Thor action. Agent Coulson touches base with the god of thunder, and Loki admits Laufey into Asgard. His mission? To assassinate Odin. Next, our characters use the major swings of the story and their personal journeys to move towards the climax. Heimdall's movie-long dedication to Thor helps him break his entrapment. Loki tables the turns on Laufey, revealing his true shenanigans. Then Thor confronts Loki for some intergalactic sibling rivalry. Then the final confrontation plays out between our protagonist and characters against the antagonistic force. Loki confesses to craving Odin's fatherly approval through mass genocide. Thor ramps up his intensity when Jane is threatened. Then he faces his personal Kobayashi Maru, destroy a realm, or give up Jane, which culminates in a brief moment where our protagonist finally, and oftentimes metaphorically, overcomes their place in the Act 1 status quo. Thor destroys the Rainbow Bridge to stop the destruction of Jotunheim, and accidentally lives up to his promise to Eric to keep his distance from Jane. We experience the direct aftermath of the climax. This can give our characters a moment to reflect on the situation, or else wind down the action with a coda. Odin wakes up and saves the day, somehow, and Loki chooses a life of independent mischief than to accept Thor's inevitable coronation. Then Jane realizes the bridge is closed, and she's cut off from Thor. Next, we touch base with additional characters, typically to contrast them against the new status quo. The Asgard crew drinks and celebrates, everyone healthy and spirited, and they reflect on Loki's abandonment. Then we conclude with a tight focus on our protagonist, specifically to contrast them against how we met them at the opening. Odin finds in Thor a worthy heir, which is good because he's fresh out of sons, while Jane, now a S.H.I.E.L.D. private contractor, searches for him in the skies. And there you have it. Kenneth Branagh's superhero blockbuster Thor adheres perfectly to the 29-point story structure every step of the way. And yet another Marvel movie proves the standard format true. Now, let's move on from a Norse god out of place here on Earth to an NPC who's out of place in the main narrative. Join me next time for Sean Levy's 2021 Sci-Fi CGI Fest, Free Guy. As always, thank you so much for your time. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy this content, and consider commenting on and sharing this video to help the channel find its audience. Take care of yourselves out there, and I'll talk at you next time.